other than like, I know and you know, and we can just feel good in that, but there's no real prize, but thank you. Okay, it looks like the numbers have settled just a bit. My name is Samaa Abdurraqib. My pronouns are she, her, and hers. And I will be the facilitator for this evening. I'm really excited to be joined by Sett Vincent and Muntaha Mohamed. And we're gonna have a lovely, really intimate, in terms of like smallness, conversation. This isn't the smallest panel. There are just two folks on the panel. And as usual, I'm grateful to Kristen, who's behind the scenes running all of the tech stuff. So I'm going to introduce the panelists. I'm welcoming you. That has happened. You have been welcomed. I'm going to introduce the panelists and then allow them some space to talk about their organizations, the organizations they're representing today. And then we have our discussion. And our discussion, there are questions that we worked on together. The discussion usually goes for about 40 minutes, 45 minutes or so. I invite and encourage you to drop questions into the chat box, which is down at the bottom right of your Zoom screen, or you can drop them into the Q&A box, which is along the bottom black toolbar. And you can drop those at any point in time in the panel. If there's something that like usually what I do is I save about 15 minutes at the end to go into those questions and pose them to the panelists. But if there's something, or a couple of people have asked the same question, I might interrupt our planned questions to ask that question, and they are aware of that. They will not be surprised. And then we close, and you all, share your gratitudes, and that's how this evening will go. So I'm just going to get right into introducing the panelists. One moment, please. I always wait until the last minute until the actual moment to read the bios, because I feel like I always learn a new thing about if there's a panelist that I know or am vaguely familiar with. So I'm excited to read these bios. So first, I'd like to introduce Sett Vincent. Sett Vincent is a 20-year-old man of color who moved to Maine 4 years ago from Connecticut. I did not know that. I did not know he moved from Connecticut. He has always been interested in activism and organizing, but never had the resources to do so until he moved to Maine. He is the director of Pine Tree Youth Organizing and a staff person for Resources for Organizing and Social Change, ROSC. He talks openly about his experiences, such as not finishing high school, being homeless, and being born into poverty, to normalize asking for help and relying on community. Thanks, Sett. Our other panelist is Muntaha Mohamed. She is a Black Somali woman, artist, and activist living on Abenaki land in Portland. She currently works for Portland Empowered as the lead facilitator and director of youth engagement, and is committed to helping support high schoolers to gain more decision-making power. She also volunteers with Black Power, the organization Black Power, and sits on the board for MindBridge. I did not know that, Muntaha. She loves discussing and learning about healing, Black liberation, Africana history, Afrofuturism, intersectional movement work, and reimagining as an organizing method. Muntaha believes in building community, creating safe spaces, and enacting the courage it takes to envision and move towards an equitable world together. I love both of those bios. Thank you, Sett. Thank you, Muntaha, for being here with us. Okay, thank you. And so the goal of the series has been to bring awareness to the work that the featured organizations are doing, and to bring awareness to the important and pressing issues that lie at that intersection, whatever the intersection is that we are addressing in the panel, and to inspire all of you to support these highlighted organizations. And so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sett to talk a little bit about his work.
I thought I already unmuted. Hello. My name is Sett Vincent. My pronouns are he, him. I work for Pine Tree Organizing and ROSC, like Samaa said. Right now, we're on our way back to the regularly scheduled programming after focusing almost entirely on mutual aid during the pandemic. But in a couple months, you'll be hearing about the youth activism gathering, which is where, well, we've done it for 20 years now, which is really cool. It's a space for youth to get connected to each other and other grassroots organizations in Maine. It's usually an in-person 3-day event, so the formatting is going to be different this year. We're still figuring that out. We have other events like the Changing Maine Gathering and the Grassroots Organizing Workshop, which I've never said properly until right now. They've taken a couple years off at this point, so we can go around and ask people what they really actually need from that space, so we aren't just telling people what they don't need to know. ROSC is a fiscal sponsor for many organizations in Maine who do great work, like the Peace and Justice Center of Eastern Maine and Racial Equity and Justice, who are now involved in the Greater Bangor Houseless Coalition, which gets houseless people together with power holders to make direct change in their city. That's going pretty well. We are super big on being an entry point in organizing, which is why everything we do is on a sliding scale payment system, meaning you can come to events for free or the maximum amount or anywhere in between. We just want you to have the information and be in the space. We also mentor youth leaders, which is me, and offer peer-to-peer consulting. I myself am still learning, and I'm very nervous, and I still consider myself very new. I've only been doing this for about 3 years, and one of which was completely taken over by like pandemic type organizing, which is very different than normal organizing. So I haven't actually spoken much on panels, so I'm very nervous. But we definitely believe in teaching by doing, and I feel really lucky that I can be paid to learn how to be like a better public speaker and organize in my community. And I think that's everything I had to say.
Thank you, Sett. That was brilliant. And I just want to, those of you who aren't familiar with ROSC, when Sett says, when he says that ROSC, Resources for Organizing and Social Change, organization he's representing, is a fiscal sponsor for a lot of organizations doing good work. I mean, there are a lot of organizations working that are Black-led, that are led by folks of color, Indigenous folks, lots of organizations that are led by people who are impacted by poverty. So anyway, I just wanted to, you did beautifully. I just thought maybe I just put a top hat. Muntaha, tell us about Portland Empowered, please.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Sett, for all that information. And I definitely just wanted to say before I continue that I resonate. One, I have been doing this particular work for the last 2.5 years, and also resonate with, I mean, like, I definitely believe in like continuous learning, and also, yeah, like, I think maybe I edited it out of this bio, but in other ones I've said like growing as an activist, and I really feel that, so thank you. I work for Portland Empowered, and so Portland Empowered recently transitioned away from like a previous fiscal sponsor and also location, and now we are housed in the same building as the superintendent's office. So we are now like more closely allied with the Foundation for Portland Public Schools, which is great. And so our work has like kind of been concentrated. And so before there were, anyways, what Portland Empowered is working on right now is mainly, generally, a very strong structure of Portland Empowered is the parent engagement side and the youth engagement side. The parent side has been running since Portland Empowered began, like several years ago, and I don't quite remember the exact number. And then the youth side started maybe 7 years ago. And so generally, Portland Empowered just works to help parents and students who have been historically underrepresented as strong voices in the educational system, and just help them to facilitate their own empowerment and organizing, and yeah, mainly helping them to uplift their voices. Yes. And then there are a few other things that are happening that are a part of Portland Empowered. I'll say a couple and leave like a couple out because it's just less related, and I don't need to tell you necessarily. But one is the Civic and Community Engagement Fellowship, which started the first year last year. And this is something that Pius created, who is the director of Portland Empowered. And it's mainly to bring together international students or young adults in Portland, Maine, to help them to grow networking skills, to get more plugged into the community overall, and also to grow as like in what could be potentially like either just organizing futures or political futures. So it's pretty open-ended, and it was a pretty great space. We met once in person before COVID started. And so I work primarily with the youth engagement piece of Portland Empowered. It's a big part of what I spend my time on and what I enjoy doing more. And so recently, YEPS, which is what Youth Engagement Partners, that's the short term for it. What YEPS has been working on, moving forward from last summer, which was like, we talked about being less urgent, and still there was a rush and urgency overall in a project called Reimagine Education, where we were bringing together youth and high schoolers from all over Southern Maine. They actually didn't have to be a part of Portland. They came from Portland, Gorham, Westbrook, some higher up in Maine, some who were previously a part of Portland Public Schools and then moved and still wanted to be a part of the meetings, which was really great. And so we brought together all of these students, and to have them directly engage with adults who are in decision-making positions. So people that were a part of the Department for Education, superintendents, principals, vice principals, staff, and so on. And what came out of that, they created a list of recommendations, which I'll share at the end. And that has just, along with a bunch of other work, I feel like that's the best thing to highlight because this is really just meant to be the intro. That has really helped be more of a stronger foundation for what YEPS is continuing to do, which is just grow in organizing methods to learn more, and to advocate and learn how to better advocate for themselves. And obviously they can't do that alone. So that is some information about the work that Portland Empowered does. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Muntaha. So yeah, I think there will be ample time in the questions to draw our attention back to other aspects of the work. Thank you both. So the first question, I am just, as I've said to both of you, I'm just really excited about this panel because generally speaking, my work has both like my paid work, my other work does not really put me into contact with young people who are like in high school and younger. And yet I'm often so inspired by the work that I see Black, Brown, Indigenous youth and other youth of color doing here in Maine. And so I'm wondering if you could take some time to talk about the ways that you've seen youth activism shift in the past year, particularly in light of the uprisings for Black lives, or any other issues that have been affecting young people in the past year. I'm going to start with Sett. Do you want to start us off?
Yeah. Well, something that I noticed was the pandemic definitely helped everyone get used to things being online. And then when the BLM movement started happening, I noticed a lot more resources than I've normally noticed on just like how you can help support different organizations, and like what you can do in your own life, which has always been great. I get a question a lot that's like, what can I do as a youth? You know, I don't have a job, I don't have a car, you know, what can I do to help be active? So all those resources being like so open has been really cool. I've noticed a lot of people spreading more information that way.
Thanks, Sett. One second, Muntaha. Bill, you're dropping some information in the chat, and I always appreciate you, Bill, and I'm always happy that you are present. But I really want us to focus on these two youth organizers and the organizations that they represent and the work that they're doing. We did have a wonderful panel on homelessness, and I think you were there and you offered some wonderful insight. But I just want I want folks are here to be with Muntaha and Sett. And so thank you. Go ahead, Muntaha. What have you been noticing for the past year in terms of like organizing?
Yeah, thanks for that. I mean, the biggest thing that I noticed was more, and I felt this for myself too. I personally felt more permission to name what was happening, like, because before people would kind of skirt around naming white supremacy and saying that, hey, this is actually for Black students, and like, because sometimes people can talk about like people of color rather than like talking about who they actually mean, whether it's like Indigenous people or Black folks or Latinx, anything. So that was the biggest shift that I noticed, and I think I felt grateful for, because in like, I have been working as a Black woman in majority white nonprofit settings, and especially in our previous location, we were housed at USM, and that is like a huge oppressive, like, just air. Like, I felt it every day when I walked in. I felt drained. And so although like I had allies as coworkers, it felt a lot for me to try and name things on my own felt hard, especially when there's just like less Black people, less people of color overall, both working with me. And so then when it came to working with youth, I think like they generally felt freer Also because we were always meeting like with youth. They were meeting with their own peers. I was meeting with them. I think when we would meet with school partners, like superintendents or principals, like things would feel different. And generally it's because it's like comforting white supremacy. And so I think like that aspect really changed. And I both saw that and felt that very personally. Yeah. And yeah, that's basically it. Or one thing that I noticed.
Can you just explain what you mean by comforting white supremacy?
So comforting people in positions of power, like saying things as nicely as possible, not maybe not naming white supremacy or naming the racism that students are experiencing as racism, or that, hey, this school is a racist environment, the structure is race, like just anything like that. Naming systems as racist was like few and far between. And so now it's like in almost every conversation. And that's there are a lot of positives to that.
And has it impacted the Black youth or other youth of color, Latinx youth that you work with, just being explicit? And that's a question for, that's a question for both of you, but Muntaha, because you brought it up specifically, I'm curious.
Being able to see if can you just say?
Yeah, so just hearing it named explicitly and them being able to name it explicitly.
Yeah, I think overall, yes. And I think like, I don't know how much of a change there. I'll say yes, blanket yes. Okay. And also like, I don't feel like the youth that I worked with had like a big change in that as much as I did, because I was an employee and working under a nonprofit and kind of like a part of the system in that way. And so, yeah.
Thank you. So my next question is like more broadly speaking about working with youth. And I just think about all the ways that it can feel really, or it can, feel for older folks, feel really energizing and invigorating for adults or older people to see young people taking the lead on initiatives or trying to figure out ways to partner with young people or bring young people into whatever project or seat at whatever table. And I just imagine that there are things that we that older folks should just be aware of and keep in mind when we're trying to engage with young people. Muntaha, what are some of those things that we should keep in mind?
How much adultism is a thing, and how much youth organizing relies on adult participation and adult willingness, because like the organizing part is about youth. I mean, like, yes, we are also talking about as YEPs ways that we can move forward in action steps without relying on adults. And also the main part of that change is about like intergenerational work, intergenerational organizing. And so I think the biggest thing is that like there's performative allyship where adults and either like teachers or whatever adults in whatever positions that want to hear input from youth, and that the work and energy and exhaustion that can bring about with youth having to repeat the same things over and over again with no change, So I'd say just like be aware of what actions, what ideas are coming through in either your personal lives or inter um, interpersonal and also systemic relationships. I mean, I saw some names of people, and also like Bill was talking about his organization. So uh, you know, like I don't know who works with who, where you're all from. If you are a part of organizations where you're wanting to hear input from youth, um, being very mindful about how that can actually be more of an active allyship that is like really rooted in purpose rather than performance. Um, and yeah, just also knowing how much, like, yes, youth, it's amazing, like so much of this work with YEPs that they feel inspired by and I feel inspired by, and like we all love as a group, is helping them to uplift their voices, like learning how to advocate, learning organizing strategies, like as much as I'm able to pass off. And I'm also learning a lot, and that's great. And also, like, it's not on them. Like,
Mm.
it's not all on youth to like make the changes and change the school system. They see it very clearly. They experience it firsthand, like the benefits and some dangerous downfalls. And also, like, they can't fix it on their own,
Mm.
and the work can't be put on them. So a lot of the time, like, in order to really move forward, like sustainable change is when there's intergenerational organizing and adults understand that they are in positions of power and that actually a lot of the work is in their hands. So yeah.
Excellent. Set.
I feel like I don't have a lot to add to that. That was amazing. I guess just another thing is like a worry that I usually have is are people who are, you know, more experienced in the work, even if we're the same age, but more experienced in the work, are they going to like look down on me because I don't know as much?
Mm.
And I feel like creating a space that's very open to questions and, you know, being very open about like I'm still learning stuff because everyone's always learning. I think that that's a really good way to engage people. And
Mhm.
I had a thing I was going to say, but I lost it.
It'll come back.
Yeah, it'll be there. But yeah, just create like a good safe space to really learn in would be really cool.
Set, what you're saying is just making me think about, you know, when we were planning the session, we were talking about like basically like about accessibility to organizing, to activism, to movement building, and how I love how you said, we're talking about youth leadership, and I introduced the separation between like, okay, the youth and adults, but you said, you know, even people the same age with different, maybe one has more experience. And I think that that's another way of, that's another framing. But I just remember in our conversations, we talked about how organizing spaces, when those of us who have more experience, either inadvertently or purposefully, act as gatekeepers and don't allow people to either to learn or to learn at their own pace, or to even to participate at whatever level they're ready for. How that just ends up being such a problem. And so thank you for talking about your personal experience. I don't know if there's if you like in your work at ROSC or even Pine Tree, if that's the kind of space that you try to create for young people when you're working with them?
It really is. When I first entered the space with ROSC, the person who runs it is named Sass, and Sass asked me completely seriously if I knew how to read. And as someone who has dyslexia and does have problems with words, it was a really good thing to hear that and be able to answer it like honestly and start the relationship with like the understanding that I'm gonna have some problems with words. It was a great way. Like that was 3 years ago, and I still remember exactly how they said it and like the situation we were in because it made me feel so like seen, I guess, and like I couldn't say I didn't know something and that would change our relationship. Like I would always be able to be honest about what I did and didn't know. And that's really the only way that I'm actually going to grow in this is if I'm honest about those things. So that was a great thing.
Thank you for sharing that. I love that. And I'm always here for like a Sass story that makes my heart feel warm. I'm always here for that. So thank you for sharing that. I just want to, there are folks who are dropping lovely things into the chat, and I don't think they're going to the attendees. They're just going to the panelists. So I just want to say some of them out loud. So someone is just saying that this is so informative for them, and he is so glad that you all are sharing this. And Muntaha, what you said about purpose rather than performance is a great way to put it for him, and he's keeping that in mind. And someone else said, just affirmed what you said, Sett, that we are all at different stages of learning and activism. Folks, feel free to drop your questions into the chat. If you do, you might want to just make sure you've clicked the little blue bar and that says panelists and like highlight where it says panelists and attendees so that everyone can, if you want to share your question with everyone who is attending, or your comment with everyone who's attending. But if it is just for the panelists, then you can just send it to us. That's also good too. Okay, so another kind of broad question. I know we've been kind of moving back and forth between talking specifically about youth of color, Black youth, but I think I'm also just curious about the bigger, broader questions about working with young people, young folks. So what are some tried and true ways to get young people interested in and engaged in organizing and activism? I forgot who started before. Muntaha, go ahead.
Yeah, generally, like making it as friendly, accessible, and engaging as possible, while also like being a space for productivity, because that's actually something that like they're craving, to make headway in changing their school environments. And yeah, like have fun with icebreakers. And generally also like, I could feel when things were different in the room when my energy was different. And so just understanding like how much as a facilitator, or just anyone that is organizing or wanting to organize with youth, how much my energy like sets the tone. And it doesn't like, it's not like the end all be all when it comes to my mood. And also like it maybe it's more of a personal thing. Maybe I just feel like it's different. I don't know. I usually doing check-ins at the end of every meeting. Like my favorite thing is, what did you like about today? And what would you like to change for next time? Like having some simple and consistent way to get feedback and also like account for that feedback and change whatever is happening. And yeah, like I make flyers for meetings. That's actually, I enjoy that very much. And yeah, I think like one thing that I have been doing to help them feel more confident is just offering them more information and knowledge. And this kind of connects to what you were saying, Sett, earlier. Like, this is not in your words. I don't remember quite what you said, but something around insecurity and not feeling like, yeah. And so just with that, like, I know for a fact that like uh, organizing spaces have to be accessible and safe, like two big values for that. Um, and like people don't have to know everything. Like I think as best as I can, leading away from elitism whenever it comes up in language or anything. And also, language is a tool to identify and also grow more confident in naming what students are already seeing and experiencing within the schools. So I think just like walking that line, like, is something that I've been doing around like, yes, like you already know your experience, like you can talk about it, that's valid. And also here are some resources to help if you are feeling insecure or wanting a different way to look at it or even just express it to other people.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
yeah, and offering more open space for youth to, because like the more that I've been doing that, like the last Friday, I brought in my friend and also like someone that I organize with, Hawa Mohamed from Restorative Justice Institute of Maine, and she came to talk about to YEPs on Friday around restorative justice, and that just sparked like and inspired so much discussion for them and also ideas on how to engage other peers of theirs and how to bring them more into the meetings, what they could do. They basically created the agenda for the next meeting, which is my goal all the time. And so that was awesome. And that's an example of like one way to that I have been doing to keep youth interested and also engage and like help them to grow.
Mm. Mm. Thank you, Muntaha. Sett.
Yeah, I feel a lot of that. Definitely like something that we do for the youth activism gathering. We usually have a group of like 12 youth organizers to really get it going. And what we do is usually Sass and I will take care of the catering and the venue and stuff so that the 12 youth organizers can focus on the content and the
Mhm.
workshops that they want to see.
Mhm.
Which kind of goes back to what Muntaha was saying earlier about the intergenerational aspects of youth organizing, where the youth need to see what they want to see, and they need to get what they want to get out of the content without having to worry about knowing how to talk to a caterer or something. So that's always really cool, is to see like what they can come up with without the burden of finding a venue or something. That's always really cool. Um, yeah. And something that I definitely feel is that the internet is a huge part of my life. Like YouTube has been around since I was 6 years old, and I feel like not enough organizations, use it. um, and I mean, there's a lot of different things you can use, like YouTube, TikTok, Discord, Instagram, Facebook. Um, Definitely just using all of those because they are just something I grew up on. They're something I'll always have in my life. Uh, and I think the internet has definitely changed how organizing happens.
That's the truth.
So
Mhm.
yeah, leaning into that is something that I would definitely recommend for engaging with youth.
Mhm. Mhm. I mean, it would be hilarious if I tried it, but I bet you there are people who are really, who are really good at it. I said what you just said. I mean, it just makes me think about, I just think that that's so, well, both of you just said, but when you were like, we take, me and Sass, you and Sass take care of the logistics, which is like the part about organizing a thing that is like, ugh. And they are able to, you just create a container and then they're able to fill that container. And I think that is brilliant. And I just think of, Muntaha, when you're talking about like, they're creating an agenda, that just sounds magical. Like that sounds fully engaged and maybe even fully empowered. Because that means that they are setting their own priorities and they're naming what's important to them and what they want, what needs to be discussed. So, so that, I appreciate that. Anything else that you all want to share about Tried and True?
I just want to say that it's just definitely very important to trust that youth know what they need and let them fill that space. I think that's great. They know what they're missing, they know what they need.
And also, so this is.
I don't know if you're going to move on. I also wanted to add something too, to Tried and True.
Yes.
Like, yes, to, as adults, creating the container, whether that's like food, logistics, agenda, open agenda that helps to facilitate youth, like really engaging with each other. And also something that they are asking for so often is for adults to be as engaged as they are. Like, are you just hosting with the space and like going like, all right, you do your thing? Or are you like not? And that's also where like knowledge about stepping up and stepping back is really helpful, because they need engagement and willingness and passion from adults, and also still like space that primarily serves their voices. So yeah.
I feel like that's a different way of saying what you'd said early, like adults, we need to have a lot of self-awareness, because we need to be aware of like when we are taking up too much space, or when we are maybe inadvertently doing things that are disempowering, like not assuming that young people don't know what they need or don't know how to have a imaginative solution, or like that imaginative solution. Maybe we think it won't work, but that doesn't mean it won't work. You know what I'm saying? Like just a lot of self-awareness. Thank you. So Melissa is appreciating the statement about youth knowing what they need. Thank you. And Anne is appreciating the point about adult support, though. Thank you all for adding comments into the chat. I won't go through all of them. It looks like people are sending them, panelists and attendees. Now before so I'm trying to think of how to ask this question. Like both of you talked about the youth that you work with being able to knowing their own experiences, being able to name their own experiences. And I am just curious about how you make space for that particular thing. So it just makes me think about, I can reflect back when I was a young person and the different sorts of oppression that I experienced, both like systemic oppression in school, but also, racism that interpersonally I experienced. Maybe I didn't always have I couldn't always name it that way until I went to college, and, maybe I developed some vocabulary, or maybe I had different kinds of conversations with folks who were able to put it in a perspective for me. But I imagine that you all in different ways are helping young people name their experiences so that they are able to impact change that they want to see, or just do the organizing work that they want to do. So I was curious about that specific thing. How do you create space for that to happen? I know that question kind of came out of nowhere. And so if you're like, I don't want to answer that question, that's also fine.
I can go first. Definitely something that I'm still learning how to do for myself is acknowledging my intersections, and just pointing out how differently different intersections experience things, and just kind of knowing that that's valid. I feel like something that youth hear a lot is like, you're too young to know that, you're too young to have an opinion on that thing. So even just letting them speak and letting them talk about what they've experienced, I think is a very validating thing and can lead to a lot of change.
Thank you.
And what comes up for me is tied back to what I mentioned earlier around how my energy sets a precedent. And so something that I'm mindful of in more space, like kind of everywhere, is that my honesty opens up space for other people's honesty. And so the same goes with how much I practice that in spaces with YEPs. How much am I naming all of these different things? Like, yeah. And also like asking honest questions, like, and not hiding from nuances. And because like, yeah. And also another thing is that like, I think in the last year, COVID, uprisings, like all of it, like so much. People, like there have been a lot of resources out, and then also like something that is almost like a reflexive ask, and that adults can ask a lot of the time with youth is, how can I help? Or what can I do to support you? What are your ideas? What do you need? And like, again, yes, like youth can name what they need. And also like I've experienced that when I hear that question, it is so tiring. It is literally so exhausting to like be experiencing something and then also have to like tell whoever is in a space or a position of power how they can help me.
Yes.
And so like what something I learned from Yes organization, which hosts jams, is this process of offering, like, what can I give? What do I want to receive? What can I offer? What do I want to receive? And so I think a lot of the time, if you are really wanting to help and like, I honestly don't even remember. Oh yeah. I remember the question now. This ties in. This is also, anyway, there is a lot of context, but with like, Kitty, please stop that. With opening up, I don't remember how you asked the question, but either way, like it helps open up. What do you ask?
Yeah, how they're able to, just empowering young folks to be able to open up space for them to name their own experience.
Yes.
Yeah.
Giving them some place to like jump off from, giving a jumping off point, whether it's like ideas for actions, or ways that I, as the facilitator and adult and support ally, can offer support and help. They can change that, they can tweak it, they can ask for something else. Like, I think just always like offering already identified ways of support helps others be able to like navigate what they really need in a way that kind of takes the pressure off and exhaustion away.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I just, that question came from me just thinking about, I mean, especially in the work that you're doing, Muntaha, because you are also like the students that the young people that you're working with are also trying to affect change on the systemic level. And so they're going to these meetings with superintendents and things. And so, and I imagine, as Sett said, there's, I mean, maybe not from superintendents, but like there is that like tendency to say, you're too young to be able to know the complexity or whatever. And, but in those times when you're there meeting with superintendents and all these administrators, you want them to be able to name their experience and feel empowered by being able to name their experience. And so I was just curious about that. Thank you for responding to that question. And in the chat talks about a time for them when they were trying to be an adult ally and at a city meeting, and the folks at the city meeting invited a youth perspective, and then they didn't really listen to or act on the points brought up by the youth. And says the best thing adult allies can do is to hold those in power and account to seriously hold on a second, to seriously respond to the requests from community youth. Yes, I feel like that probably, and you were probably not alone. I feel like I have witnessed that happen many times, and these folks have probably lived it and ushered young people through it. I have one more question for you all before I'm going to start going to the chat. And so again, people drop your questions. Some people are already dropping questions, and thank you. I'll turn to those in just a second. But my last question for the two of you from my list is, what has inspired you in your organizing and activism? And I'm particularly interested in what has inspired you as activists and organizers of color to work with young people. Sett, do you want to start us off?
Yeah. Well, it's actually kind of funny. The first ever thing that got me thinking about organizing and how we help people is when my stepdad asked me a question of like, if there are people who are hungry around the world and we have an abundance of food right next to us, how should we fix those problems? And I was like 8, and I told him we should give them the food. And he was like, see, you can say that because you're young and you don't think about like the cost to fly a plane over to those people. You just think about how to help those people. And he told me to not forget it, and I never did. So I feel like something that inspires me a lot is riding like the cusp of being able to just be like, just help people. Let's just do it. And also like there's a real world around us full of capitalism that we have to navigate to do those things.
Mm-hmm.
I always go back to that story whenever I think about helping people, because it's like, I know I can do it. There's just things in the way, but we'll move those things out of the way and then we can do it.
Nice. That's it. Move those things out of the way. Muntaha.
I really felt that, Sett. Thank you for that. Generally, what has inspired me are my own experiences. Yeah, I think I just need a moment to process. I was really in listening mode.
It's okay, that happens. I just have the last thing that Sett said about just moving the things out of the way. Like I also have a visual of it. Like, thank you for that, Sett. If you want to keep processing, Muntaha, I just want to, let's see. Sass is in the chat just affirming that they worry about being paternal or ageist, but like they have some gratitudes for the idea of blending the offering with the asks. And And they say that that's very helpful feedback. They always worry about being paternal or ageist, but it's so valid. And yes, thinking, and they're reflecting on how exhausting it is when, you're experiencing the problem and you're also supposed to come up with a solution to the problem that you're experiencing. Muntaha, you ready? Or you
Yes,
also?
I'm ready. Thank you for that. That was really helpful. Yeah, so my personal experiences, like, honestly, like, basically, I think what inspires me to work with young people is, one, like, the gratitude that I have that, like, this is my first job out of college. And it came through a connection, which, like, also kind of sucks. Like, it was based on who I knew. But also, yeah, anyways, just inherent unfairness in that. And also gratitude. And, like, I think there's a place in me from, like, how I felt in high school that is just literally so strong. It honestly feels like inner child healing whenever I'm, like, doing this work a little bit. And also, there's a huge part of this that is, like, not about me. It's obviously, those are one of the ways I benefit, inner child healing. And also, like, as I am developing my praxis, my social justice praxis, like the ways that my beliefs are applied into my actions, like, a lot of that is just, how am I honoring other people for who they are? How am I honoring their autonomy, their creativity, imagination, love, care, hearts, all of that? And so I think that's both of those reasons, yeah, are inspirations.
Say all that, Muntaha. Say it. That was beautiful, and so much truth there. All the things, from the strain, the gratitude and inherent unfairness, all of it was just the truth and wonderful. Thank you. So let's see. I'm scrolling up very smoothly through the comments. So smooth in my scrolling here. Okay. So please ask me to, like, you all have the questions there, but please, if you need me to repeat them, I will repeat them. But Kim asks if Kim is curious about if or how your organizations work to build coalitions across youth groups, youth organizations, or groups of people who might be working on different projects or coming from different points of view on some issues, but have overlap and can build more power coming together sometimes too. So what kind of coalition building work do your organizations do? And then there's a follow-up question, but let's just start with what kind of coalition building work do your organizations do? One I know really well, the other one I don't know. And the thing is, with any of these questions, there's no obligation to answer any of them. And if you need more time, that's all good too. Would either of you want to address that one?
I can start, because I can say I have no idea. That hasn't been my work so far. I'm still learning.
Thank you, Seth.
And that's my answer.
Yeah, I'd say that there's a lot of work that needs to be done on that. I know, like, right now, I am one employee leading YEPs. And so Portland Empowered right now, since the transition, is 3 people, plus, like, support, technical and, like, financial support, or fiscal sponsorship from the Foundation for Portland Public Schools. So, one, capacity-wise, like, pathways to coalition building, like right now, yes, we are building coalitions with other organizations. We are working with Lewiston and MCI, although I can't exactly remember what that stands for.
Community integration.
Thank you so much.
I just happen to know that.
Great. I'm so glad you did. And yeah, there is a lot of growth that needs to happen with coalition building. And I actually noticed a question that I do want to answer. When would be a good time for that?
Who asks it?
Emily, how can we shift past a binary of youth/adult and bring liberatory practices of youth organizing to all of our organizing spaces?
Did you see that one too, Sett? I want to make sure you have your eyes on it. Okay. Okay. Yeah. You want to answer?
Yeah. I was really grateful that you brought this up, Emily, because this is something that like came into like conversation more recently than anything. Like, again, this is my first job working at this nonprofit and kind of being integrated into the language that they use. And so then I learned that, oh, youth activism, there's a thing around youth and adults, and obviously yes, like, and also it's like youth, yes. I do want to say I do feel very tired of that and also confused. And so your question is something that I have wanted to like delve into deeper, because like I think some friends of mine who are around my age were talking about how they never liked being called youth, or just their different experiences when they were younger with that word. And yeah, like I totally hear you on moving past the binary and like really focusing more on like the liberation that youth organizing practices bring into organizing spaces. And also I just feel like that's like a conversation with answers that like I want to grasp, and I don't quite know. I have the same question though, so thank you.
That is a really good question, Emily, and I feel like it's I mean, you know, it's in the title of the panel, it's in the things that I said, even as I'm like, because Muntaha, you brought it up in our planning, and so I've been like thinking, and you know, trying to say like younger people, but that's still there. It's still there. It's like younger people, and then there's older people, you know. So
yeah, and also like acknowledging the differences and acknowledging adultism as like a force is valid and real, and also like, yeah, yes, that's my add-on. So
I feel very similar. Yeah, like whenever I'm in a space with high schoolers, I'm always like, I'm an adult. I am not like a youth like they are. But then I talk to people who have been organizing and they're like in their 30s and 40s, and I'm like, I have so much to learn. I am a toddler compared to you. So much to learn. And yeah, I definitely think like the blending is very important, and where I hope to be. I just hope kind of youth organizing is just a part of organizing. And we just kind of, you know, are grateful for people from all ages to have a say in the current thing.
I also feel like the foundation of it is honoring voices of people who do not have systemic power. Like that's the root of it, and this is one example. And yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of youth are still in a, sorry, a lot of youth are still in a space where they have to like ask to use the bathroom every day. So it can be hard to feel powerful. um, I feel like
Hmm.
I had a way of saying something, but I forgot it. So I'm just going to end there. But trust that I had something cool to say.
Trust and believe. And if it comes back, you can just say it. Emily, thank you for dropping the question, because I don't think that I read it. So I'll just read it out loud, because I'm not going to assume that everyone is looking in the chat and is reading the chat. So Emily asks, how do you define youth? I've heard it used different ways in different spaces. Sometimes Emily is 25, am a youth, sometimes not. How can we shift past a binary of youth / adult, and bring liberatory practices of youth organizing to all of our organizing spaces? Thank you all for responding to that question. There's a question, I'm scrolling up through the chat. There was a question from Connor, I think. Hang on. Connor is curious to hear from you two about what some of the issues are that you are hearing from youth with respect to access to school and education. And I don't know if you're working so much in school, Sett, so.
Someone has their hand raised.
See that? I'm on it.
Okay, all right. I mean, issues, there's a whole list of them, and I was gonna share this for the last question, but I'll share it now. And you can scroll through, because I think like they're all kind of in here.
Would it be helpful for Kristen to also share the screen?
Oh, sure, yeah.
For people this, but then
Yeah.
which one?
The first one I put in. This was the list of recommendations that YEPS created last summer. And it acknowledges like everything from discipline policies and practices, academic placement policies and practices, decolonizing the curriculum, culture within the schools, diversity and representation, interaction between students and teachers, and just how leaders lead in response to youth voice, what people do with the information that they've heard. So this is something that I don't necessarily have like one thing to point to. I think like I have actually already mentioned one of the biggest things that youth are struggling with, which is, oh wait, no, you were talking about access. Sorry. What was the question again?
What's the question? Let me reread the question. Hang on a second. Let me find it. Very tactfully scrolling up. Connor is curious to hear from panelists about what are some of the issues that you are hearing from youth with respect to access to school and education.
Yeah, okay, yes, I was just about to ask to stop the screen share because it's actually less relevant for this specific question. Sorry about that. Oh, okay, apparently it was right on point. Okay. I will add on that both mental health is a huge factor that students are bringing up, also with just like Zoom fatigue, stressors from like COVID all around the world, and also trauma, racial trauma, that is continuous, and all of that are really just like the biggest, from the students that I've been meeting with, are the biggest, things that get in the way of their access to school and education. I know that like technology is still a huge thing, and like I may not be hearing from those youth for a reason. And so like I just know like general ones that are common knowledge: technology, money, support from parents. Like when it comes to like students who are either like children of immigrants or for whatever reason their parents are busy working, there's less support in the home. That is a huge stressor when students have to like do all the work with keeping themselves on track, get paperwork, whatever is needed for schools. Like that's like get to the bus. Like how does this is less. I mean, actually, Portland Public Schools is getting ready to go back like 4 full days in person. So it is becoming relevant again when it comes to like access to bus schedules. And I know like very personally, my mom is a teacher of Portland Public Schools and has been for the last 20 years. Like they really do a lot of, at least my mom and the people that she's allied with does a lot of work and effort and forethought when it comes to access for the students that they're helping to teach. And also like the system is messed up overall. Like so many people are without the resources that they need because overall, like although there are resources available, it's either like being able to bring it to the people in need, or somehow there's just like one barrier or another that is still in the way. So yeah.
Thank you. Okay. So yeah, Bill is sharing that it's Bill is sharing his experience having to create a youth advisory board. So he says it's important to bring language for all meetings, understandable, making sure that the language that people are bringing into meetings, making sure that it's understandable for everyone. And he says that unfortunately, the youth term was a part of a housing and urban development text to apply for a project for funding a few years ago. So they created a youth advisory board to apply for funds. And he suggests an explanation of commonly used terms and definitions as a part of agendas. And I think that is a good idea. That is about accessibility. Yes. So what, I don't think that there are any other questions in the chat. If folks have other questions, please drop them as I'm awkwardly scrolling up to try to find any that I missed that feel powerfully relevant. Okay. Sett, you see the Q&A in there for you? Okay, great. I don't see any other. Okay. Oh, wait, someone is just Claire. Claire wants to know if yes, they will. Claire wants to know if Portland Empowered is going to post updates on the progress that you're making with the recommendations.
Yeah.
Yes.
It wasn't in my mind, and also I'm just like, oh yeah, great idea.
Yeah.
And also like that is definitely like something that seems very like of course we would do that. For some reason it did not come to my mind yet, so thank you very much for that. Yes. And definitely yes, I think also it comes down to like when there is progress that YEPS is experiencing, and so far like there's yeah I guess we'll see.
So are there, if folks on this call want to support your organizations, how might they be able to support your organizations? Sett. Oh.
Sorry, I was copying down Bill's email so I could message him later. What was the question?
How can folks support your organizations?
Yes. Well, definitely the first thing that comes to mind is donations are always great. They keep the work going, they keep us funded, they show that people care in one way. So resources resources for socialchange.org/donate is a great page. Check it out. Other ways are like just get involved and build relationships with the people around you that you want to organize with, especially if they're youth. Don't tokenize, you know, and really try to like figure out how to make meaningful relationships with the people that you want to organize with.
I just want to say, because of ROSC, I know this. Usually we do drop links to websites, but I will say that ROSC's website is just a wee dinky bit jacked up right now. It's just not. And so that's why we haven't been dropping it. But Andrew, but Kristen just dropped it, and you can click on that link and see how you feel.
Just imagine there's more colors and pictures, and it'll be fine.
Muntaha, how can folks support your organizations? And if screen sharing needs to happen, you talked about that. So just.
Yeah. I don't necessarily need screen sharing. I'd say like the first thing is the same as Sett's. Donations are huge. And so I was going to drop this in the chat. And then also the documents that I shared earlier, I'm going to share again. The recommendations that YEPs and more than YEPs, it was like a whole like amalgamation of youth from different students from different parts of Southern Maine. Created these recommendations, and if you could disseminate them and bring attention to them, and like these, like our names are on it, like in terms of being credited, and also like knowing where to return to if people want to like continue conversation around this. And also these are basically open documents where like you can take this and run with it, like that part around like adult willingness and effort and passion, like that's actually where this comes into play. Like what are the ways with whatever power that you hold systemically, what are ways that you can push these forward? What are ways that you can like uncomfortably change things in your social circles, your systemic circles? That's basically, those are the top ways that you can support.
Beautiful, beautiful. We are wrapping up. The one question came in under a wire, so I'm going to ask that question. But since we're about to wrap up, I'm going to invite you, all the attendees, to drop whatever gratitudes you have for Sett and Muntaha into the chat so that they can bask in the glow of your glowing gratitudes. I'm so grateful for both of them and the brilliance that they shared. Sass wants to know, Sass asked a self-care question. Oh, can you speak at all about how you bring self-care or fun into your work?
I will say, Muntaha mentioned earlier icebreaker questions. The most fun I've ever had was at the first YAG that I went to. I was running a couple workshops, and I asked the attendees what the opposite of fire was, if it was ice or no fire. And they went on like the entire workshop talking about it. So like bringing like just small debates that don't mean anything into a room is the greatest thing I've ever experienced.
That is a great aspect, because my first thought was water. No,
That's a
but
good one.
I don't know. But ice is the opposite, is more.
Or is it no fire?
Is it no?
Because is the opposite of fire the lack of fire or the presence of water or ice? See, I've started it again, but
All
I
right.
don't have an answer to that. It's air.
Is it air? Well,
Yeah.
because there's no fire there, then that's what's there. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. All right.
I think that's it. I'm kidding. That's my opinion. Yeah, like icebreakers, check-ins, and games of any kind. I do think like, I don't quite know for this question. I think like self-care and fun outside of work, like I bring it into spaces, absolutely. But it sounds like this is more like, where's the question again? I don't know. Yeah, I bring it into spaces, and I'm thinking about all of the other spaces that I facilitate. Yes, I try to bring in like icebreakers and fun things, and I think like there's a lot more that I could do when it comes to bringing self-care and fun into like my work apart from YEPS, basically, because right now it's just like it's YEPS and like outside of YEPS, outside of work overall. So yeah, thank you for that question, Sass.
Okay, question, Sass. I feel like that's the eternal question for anyone who is an organizer, activist, has been an organizer, activist, because we always talk about self-care, and we probably, yeah, but whether or not we actually do that self-care, this can be sporadic. So I think that that's like the perennial question. I am so grateful for the two of you. Thank you for working with me to put together the panel, the questions that I asked. Thank you for responding to the questions that I was like, let me just pull this out of the air. And thank you for giving me a chance to learn some things about both of you that, you know, that I did not know yet. Thank you, attendees, for being here. As I said in the beginning, we still have yet to do the racial justice and public policy panel. And I think that that's going to be in very early May. We are in the process of rescheduling that panel. Please share the recording. The recording will be up on Main Initiative's website, and I believe I think that they send an email to all of the people who've registered. So please share the recording for those folks who were not here. And that's it. That's our night. 7:01.
Thank you very much for facilitating. You were great.
Yes.
And
thank you.
so I definitely learned more about both of you, and that was great. I love that. So thank you.
I love it too. I love it too. All right, folks.
So energizing to be in a space with you all.
All right, go break your fast.
Oh, I know, right? First of all, it is Ramadan, and Muntaha and I are like, we're like, and we did all right. Day one.
I've been up since 4 with like 4 hours of sleep. So I'm gonna go eat and then sleep. So
I hear that. All right. Good night, everyone.
good night. Thank you everyone for joining.